Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our city council meeting. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey is absent, Councilmember Gibbons. Here. Councilmember Lizzo. Here.
Thank you. We have a presentation tonight from Police Officer Gary Baldridge on a wonderful project that the police department does every year called Shop with the Cops. So Gary, want to come up?
Mayor, City Council, staff. Like to introduce real quick too, Detective Chris Beckman and Detective Breanne Kreitler are also here. They are the board members, current board members of the Kirkwood Police Officers Association as we run this project in conjunction with the police department. So excuse me, I need these now. I've hit that magic age. So I appreciate being here. This is a highlight as we end the year. Hopefully we end on a good note here. This was the 5th year that we were able to perform and facilitate our Shop with a Cop. So just a brief synopsis, if you will. Saturday, December 3rd, Kirkwood Police Officers Association and the Kirkwood Police Department partnered together to host our 5th annual Shop with a Cop event at the Kirkwood Walmart. Once again, Walmart was more than generous with their staff. They set out treats for the kids. Joke, pun intended. There was donuts, plenty of coffee. They're very good for the event. Okay. This event is where we get to brighten the holidays for selected Kirkwood School District children. Kirkwood School District counselors, educators, and school officials nominate the children they felt would best benefit the program and experience. Over 25 officers volunteered their time and shopped with the selected children at the Kirkwood Walmart. This fun and festive program gave the children a chance to shop for gifts for their family members and themselves, all while building a positive relationship with the police. I share a couple moments from that morning. We had several kids spend their gift card on food. We had several kids spend their money on clothes. We had one girl buy a gift for the officer that shopped with her. We saw a lot more giving than we saw getting. We saw a lot of appreciation from the parents. This year, the event provided a shopping experience for approximately 50 children from over 31 Kirkwood families. Each individual child was provided with a Walmart gift card to spend however they wanted. Additionally, due to the generosity of others, we were able to give each family a gift card to Walmart, or I'm sorry, to Aldi. I'd like to offer a very special thanks to Tom Endritz, owner of Tom's Service Station, Jess Cramper, owner of Aerobox, the Fox family of Kirkwood, Carrollton Bank in De Pere, Enterprise Bank at South Kirkwood, and especially to the Kirkwood Walmart and their amazing management staff. Many others too numerous to list. If you look at some of the pictures, you'll see some of our wives were there to wrap the gifts for the kids, volunteering their time. My kids were there, helping the staff and just being a part of it. So we talk about this event all year. We fundraise for it all year. It is an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to show you guys the conclusion at the end of the year. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Gary, thank you so much, Chris, Brianne, for this. It's just a wonderful thing that, you do for the community, and obviously you do it because you want to do it, and that just shows through. So just on behalf of everyone, thank you very much.
An honor to do so. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Gary. All right, we have a public hearing tonight. Before we get started, I'll just say a few words about public hearing and the process. A public hearing is the first time City Council is being presented with this. So everyone knows there's no vote taken tonight. You won't hear from council members if he or she is opposed to it, supports it, things like that. That will come on January 5th. One thing that I demand the council does at public hearings is an efficient public hearing. It's not a pep rally. So if you like something somebody says, we don't have clapping and cheering. We don't boo or hiss at people who might disagree with us. If someone speaks before you, I don't like repetition. Say, I agree with Sally. I agree with Tom. We want to keep this thing moving. Everyone will have a chance to speak, but if it gets repetitive and people go on and on, I will stop it. That goes for presenters and applicants and everybody. Again, the purpose of this is for the city council to get information on this application. And that is what we're all here for. And with that, we are going to have a public hearing on a request for a major site plan partial amendment at the Greenbrier Hill Country Club at 12665 Big Bend Boulevard for 4 pickleball courts and a swimming pool deck expansion. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
I would, Mayor. I'd also offer as Exhibit 1, the affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the St. Louis County. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Exhibit 3 is a list of property owners to whom notice of this hearing has been sent. Exhibit 4 is a viewer map showing the property that is the subject of the public hearing as well as the surrounding properties. Exhibit 5 is a report of the subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated November 16, 2022. And attached to that document is the site plan packet, 13 sheets, prepared by Weiss Design Group, the tree protection plan and landscape plan, the photometric site plan prepared by G&W Engineering, and the acoustic control report, which was revised dated October 12, 2021. I would also offer as Exhibit 6, a report that was submitted by the residents from, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name, Spendidarian and Willis Acoustics and Noise Control. Exhibit 7 is the report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated November 17, 2022. Exhibit 8 is a letter dated December 12, 2022 from Greenbrier Hills Country Club, and attached to that is a signature of various parties. Exhibit 9 is an email dated 11/20/2022 from Kathy. I apologize, I'm mispronouncing it. Kanush, an email dated November 28, 2022 from Linda Marr, and another email from dated December 6, 2022 from Kathy Converse with attached documents to that email. And Exhibit 10 is the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the city council?
That would be City Planner 2, Amy Lowry.
Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this project is at Greenbrier Hills Country Club, just an aerial view of the country club, and they also do have property going up into De Pere. An aerial view of where the project will be located. They're doing a pool deck expansion in this area and 4 pickleball courts in this area. Just a view of the existing conditions with the tennis courts and the tennis pro shop and the existing pool. Photos from where the pickleball court will be going and also the pool deck expansion. And more photos for the pool deck expansion. This is just a close-up of their site plan. So as I said, there are 4 pickleball courts going in here, the tennis pro shop and the existing tennis courts, and then expansion of the pool deck. And again, just a close-up on the pickleball courts with the proposed stormwater BMP to the north of that. The courts are going to be raised to the level of the tennis pro shop with a modular block wall retaining wall stretching on the north, which is being shown right here. And to the north of the tennis courts and around the pickleball courts on the west and south. And the wall will also encompass a new patio to the north of the tennis pro shop right here. The pickleball courts are proposed to be surrounded by a 10-foot tall fence with the acoustic treatment of Acoustifence on the north and south sides. And then the existing golf cart path north of the pickleball courts is going to be rerouted and slightly and rebuilt. And then to the south, they're going to construct some new golf cart parking. And they propose a 14-foot by 100-foot bioretention swale BMP right here, north of the pickleball courts and the tennis pro shop. And they're also proposing a new overland berm and swale system in this area that will direct stormwater runoff to an existing storm inlet. So MSD is going to review and approve the proposed stormwater plans. At this point in time, there's no lighting being proposed for the courts, and play is proposed from 8 a.m. to sunset Sunday through Saturday. So with regard to the pool deck, this is kind of turned on its side as north faces this way. They're expanding it to the north, east, and west with a new modular block retaining wall, a decorative pool barrier fence, and new lighting. And we did receive a site photometric plan that meets the city's lighting regulations and also the minimum lighting requirements of the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. So this is the landscape plan that was submitted. It is not quite meeting our code yet, but we're still working on that. We hope to have that with you before the first reading on the ordinance. But the plan is providing for adequate replacement of trees that will have been or were removed in the pool area. And the pickleball court project doesn't require any new landscaping. However, they are proposing landscaping, and staff believes that the additional proposed trees are appropriate and encourages their retention. So as I said, once this is been approved by the city forester, it'll come to you, and then it's going to be the responsibility of the property owner to provide continued maintenance of all the trees on the plan. Just some renderings that they had done of the proposed pickleball courts, and also renderings of the pool deck expansion. They had originally proposed moving their toddler wading pool down here, but that was not going to meet the zoning code. So they're going to keep the toddler pool where it is and just expand the pool deck. So the applicant provided a acoustical report from Acoustic Control, and there was an original report, then a revised report with acoustical model 5. And that model indicated that the sound pressure level at the nearest residential property line would be 45 decibels or less. And this model assumed that 2 pickleball courts or 2 pickleball hits simultaneously on 2 different courts with a 10-foot high fencing with the acoustical control on it would result in that 45 decibels or less. They are proposing the Acoustifence just be placed on the north and south of the pickleball courts. Wait, this is not the right. Sorry, this is not the right slide, but the P&Z conditions of note. The Planning and Zoning Commission did restrict the hours from 8 a.m. to sunset Sunday through Saturday. They had no lights installed on the pickleball courts, and no music or speakers were going to be allowed. And the Planning and Zoning Commission did put the recommendation or the that the north and south barrier fences of the pickleball courts be 10-foot high and include the acoustical barrier, and that barrier be maintained in good order, condition, and state of repair at all times. So the criteria for review of a site plan, there are 19 criteria. So I'm just going to talk about a few of them that you would need that are specific to this particular project. The development complies with all the requirements of the code and other related codes and ordinance enforced by the city. That's criteria number 2. Criteria number 12 is the design of the site surface drainage provides for the reasonable removal of stormwater so as not to adversely affect the neighboring properties. And number 14, the proposed development does not adversely affect offsite public services, including sewer, water, and streets, nor adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, nor adversely affect the general welfare of the community. As I said, there's 19 criteria. I'm available for any questions you may have. The applicant is here, and Mr. Holtrup with acoustic control is here as well, if you have any questions about his report.
Thank you, Amy. Does the applicant or any of the representative from them want to say anything before we go to questions? Okay.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jim Holtrup, and I'm the Principal Acoustical Consultant for Acoustic Control, and we are based in Wildwood, Missouri. There's been a lot of things said about the model, so I'm just going to make a few comments about the model. St. Louis County Noise Control Ordinance, which is Chapter 625 in the county code, defines a way to measure a violation of their particular code. I want everybody to understand this was written in 1972. The methodology was used, I used their methodology of what defines a violation, and that was inputted directly into the acoustic model. And the model that we use is called Sound Plan. Sound Plan is internationally used for noise. It's actually manufactured by a German company because there's none that do this in the United States. And it's actually used for any kind of noise. It could be impulsive, it could be high level noise, it could be your air conditioner, whatever the type of noise can be modeled in this particular type of software. And in this model, what we try to predict is what happens at the property line, because that's where the county code basically says is where you measure. My experience with Sound Plan, and I've been using it for about 20 years, it's only really been around for about 20 years, is that the accuracy of the model, if we go back and make measurements, is about plus or minus 2 dBA. Okay, what's 2 dBA? You can barely hear a 2 dBA change. Typically, it has to be 5 dBA for you to clearly hear the change. This is the same accuracy as the actual microphones and meters we use. So the model's within the accuracy of how we actually measured. Now, as was stated, the prediction is 45 dBA at the nearest property line. If you go farther away, it's going to get lower. It's not going to get higher. Now, typically the county code for residential, and both properties are residential, you must meet 55 dBA at the property line. This is 10 dB below what is in the actual noise control code. And in addition, I measured the ambient noise, which is in the report. The actual ambient noise is 53 to 55 dBA. This is actually lower. Doesn't mean you won't hear it. The ear is an extremely sensitive instrument. You can hear things 20 decibels below whatever the background is. For example, if you're at a party and you try to listen behind you, you might be able to hear the conversation. That's how good your ear is. Now, Kyle Ash, who is a member of the St. Louis County. And he's the person who's going to make, he's going to make the measurement to determine whether it's a violation or not. He's the only person in the county that actually does it. If it's impulsive, definition of impulsive, the definition he uses, if the, and I don't want to get into technicalities here, it's a definition called LA peak. That's the absolute maximum sound pressure level that actually occurs. It's instantaneous and it has no time. If he determines impulsive, it reduces by 50 dBA to 50 dBA. But it's not measured with peak, whether it's a violation. It's measured by a fast meter setting over minutes to determine whether that actually happens. And we're still predicting 45 dBA at the property line. Could it be wrong? Things happen. I'm an acoustic consultant. I've seen everything over the last 20 years. And just so everybody understands, I worked in noise for 30 years for Montana. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. But thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Might just want to sit there in case council has questions for you. All right, well, let's go to the council for questions. I'm going to start with Councilmember Sears tonight.
I'd like to know if those sound engineer could describe what maybe another sound that might be at 45 that we'd be familiar with. Is there a way to describe that? I understand this is impulsive or whatever, and
That's a difficult question. Typically in the county at night, assuming your air conditioner is not running outside and you don't have any barking dogs, you're probably close to 45 dBA. But understand, this is not that kind of noise. Doesn't mean you won't hear it.
and it's not that kind of noise because
It happens in a short amount of time.
Okay, the impulsive.
Like, it'll happen in under a second. And that's sort of what the county defines. If you look at it, it's a typical noise that happens less than a second. And that's a big range in acoustics, so you know, a second.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Ward?
Yeah, a question first for Amy. Amy, could you explain the rationale for bringing the plan forward before you have it code compliant?
I'm not sure I understand the question on
You mentioned in your presentation that it wasn't completed for code yet.
Oh, the landscape plan? Yes, so the rationale was they're very close, just to give there's some labeling that is issued. And just to give them some time before you actually consider it is when we need the plan. I'm hoping by the end of the week and then I can get it to you.
And then on the noise, so let's assume for a moment that the sound audit isn't correct and the fence doesn't prove to be as sound suppressive as we might think. Will it be necessary for residents to contract with a sound audit in order to find out whether they're in violation of that? Or
They would call the county and the gentleman, Mr. Ash, would be the one to come out and
if that happens, then what would be the options? A higher fence, a different fence, what would happen there?
I mean, it depends what they need to become in compliance. So yeah, perhaps a higher fence, we only allow a 10-foot high fence under our code. So that may not be the answer.
Would that potentially progress all the way to the point where you would ban, at least temporarily, pickleball?
I'm not sure I'm capable of answering that. It might be a question for John Hessel, whether we would.
I
mean,
figured
we
you'd
would-
send it my way.
I mean, from the city's perspective, we just have, whether it's a noise nuisance. So from the county's perspective, it's a little bit easier to measure.
Mhm, mhm.
So I probably go with the county to enforce it as opposed to the city, but
Correct. Keep in mind, you're dealing with two different ordinances. One is the county ordinance, which has been explained to you. That is a true measurement based upon a decibel reading, and it identifies the criteria that have to be met. Our ordinance, for better or worse, is, I'll just characterize it as subjective. What it provides is that it's unlawful for any person to make, continue, or cause to be made or continued any loud, unnecessary, or unusual noise, or any noise which unreasonably or unnecessarily either annoys, disturbs, and injures or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others. Now, the only way you're truly going to know that, the compliance with that ordinance, litigate it. Now, your question is, would St. Louis County come out and enforce their noise? Again, your assumption is that it does not comply with the county ordinance. So I'm answering it based upon that assumption when we have a report that says it will. So let's assume he's wrong. And in fact, it is a violation. Now, St. Louis County could come out and could enforce that by citing the country club with violations. Because I don't foresee, the city could likewise cite the country club for violations, because violation of the county ordinance would suggest that you are, in fact, rather than subjective measurement, are in fact violating. That's true. Now, in addition to that, could the residents seek an injunction? Yes. For a private nuisance? Yes, they could. Would the city take that responsibility on and seek an injunction, which is what I think your question was asking? And that is, as you know, I've been doing this a long time and we've never reached that level. We've always found alternative measures to obtain compliance.
Okay,
So again, that's the hard part. Let's be honest about it. That's the hard part that planning and zoning had to face, and the hard part that the city council is going to have to face. And that is, you won't really know whether or not it's truly going to meet the county ordinance until there's some actual experience. We have an expert in acoustic control who's identified that based upon the assumptions that he has made and the analysis that it does. What we have.
well,
The
thank you, Karen.
residents have presented a different report.
Yeah, my concern was, we don't always get it right. Government doesn't always get it right, but if
Really?
for some reason it goes bad on us, just what's involved in walking it back? That was all my concern.
Understood? And there's a number of alternatives and options.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah. So question, this acoustic fence is only 10 feet high. And I believe the topography, and I'm looking at here, shows that this is not, it's not flat and it's lower than the surrounding topography. So I guess my question is, this acoustic fence, which is only on the north and the south, is that correct? That is going to be a sound barrier. But if the sound goes either above the fence up towards the higher topography, or if it just goes east or west, what is the difference between the decibel levels? If you're on the other side of the fence versus if you're east or west of it, or if you're up on one of the houses that's higher up? What's the difference in the decibel levels? Meaning, how quiet does this acoustic fence make the sound?
Okay, the model has the topography in it. So wherever the houses are, they're where they are on the topography. And this is the prediction of the model. And that includes the prediction of the barrier fence. Now, Sound Plan has very sophisticated ways to calculate the way those barriers actually work. I mean, it accounts for reflections, where the noise is going. All of that is built into Sound Plan. It's a highly reliable topography-based model. We drop in topography. In fact, we raise the court. You don't see it, but it's raised. So therefore, based on my experience, the model is pretty reliable, plus or minus a couple of decibels. Now, it's still a model. Okay. Also, notice that the sound here, the other thing you should be sort of concerned with is, how did I get that number? I didn't mention how I got that number. I measured it, and McClure Engineering measured it, and it's a range. I used the highest level that I measured. That doesn't happen very often. In fact, I did a study at Forest Hills after they put in their court and actually measured what happened when 3 courts were actively used continuously for 2 hours. They deliberately did that to prove they were within the county ordinance. That report is not public, okay? So I'm talking about it. It is not a public record because it was done for a client. It's done by Forest Hills. So example, that assumes 68 L max, which is the highest level you typically can measure with a sound level meter, which has an increment of time. So I'm basing my conclusion based on what the model does. And by the way, I checked the barriers. I called the US rep for Sound Plan to make sure I was doing it right. And he said, yes.
Okay, so what, I guess my question is, what change does that acoustic fence make? If you, let's say if you didn't have the fence at all, what would the decibel levels be?
Slightly under 55. That's also in the report, by the way. There's an example without the fence.
Okay, that's all the questions I
Okay.
have for now. Thank you.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Well,
Oh,
I just wanted to ask if have you done pickleball studies in the past?
Yes,
And was the reason Forest Hills had you come out and do that, were they getting complaints?
no. It was requested by the city council to measure after the fact. And the city council there actually adopted a new regulation, which matches the county regulation. Because,
On sound, on this decibel?
right. It almost mirrors the county noise ordinance. And I was told by the mayor of the county, the reason they did it that way is they believe from their city attorney, they couldn't write anything more stringent.
There's a lot of residents here that are very concerned about this. Is there nowhere else within the 128 acres that this pickleball court could be placed?
I can't answer that question.
There's someone here that can?
I don't know.
Is there someone representing Greenbrier? Yes, please introduce yourself. So.
Mayor, council members. My name is Bill Downey. I live at 334 Greenbrier Estates Drive. I've been involved in the club and in this project really comes from its beginning. I was asked to volunteer and we know how those things go. So with regard to the site selection, we had a civil engineer Weiss group come out and help us find on our entire property a suitable spot for this. Based on, if anybody's been to Greenbrier Hills, it earns its name. The topography is severe. It's very up and down. There's not many flat spots. It's also very unique in its layout. It wanders. You know, you think of 128 acres as a big wide space. This is interwoven by design 100 years ago into our neighborhood. So when looking at sites, there was one other site that offered a relatively level area on which it could be built. Unfortunately, that would require the movement and rebuilding of our maintenance shed, probably in the site we're talking about now, which is the only spot we would have. So we didn't think that was an appropriate spot to put a maintenance shed. We also don't have where that maintenance shed is off of Highland Avenue or Highland Road. There's no parking, there's no access, so it would be street parking, which I don't think the residents would be real fan of anyway. So that's how the site was selected by our engineer. It has an adjacency to parking, it's accessible, it is on a topography on which the project could be built. And that was where the final decision was made in presenting the plan. Does that answer?
Answers. What, I wondered about your, putting green and where's that's located and if that was considered at all.
The putting green is on the golf course property.
Was that considered at all and? move the
No,
putting green down?
we didn't consider any options that destroyed existing facilities or, or golf course. And it also, again, in the uniqueness of our layout, I mean, we have, on our 18-hole golf course, there's 115 houses on it. There's not a place where you get away from the neighborhoods. If you played the course, you hit it out of bounds a lot because of that too. It's a tight, little kind of cozy neighborhood club. It's not like a Belle Reve or an Old Warson or something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Litzo.
So who to direct this question to, but I was wondering if Greenbrier has any idea of how many hours a day one or all four courts might be used, how prolonged, pickleball is the big up and coming trendy thing. I'm just wondering, as let's say compared to the tennis courts, how many hours of the day are the courts in use? How many hours do they expect the pickleball courts to be used to know how prolonged we might have this new sounds of this new game in the neighborhood? Have any projections on? You're gonna have people signed up from 8 a.m. until dusk? Or it's gonna be more intermittent? Do you have an idea?
The amount of play we're going to see there. We know it's a popular sport. We've been playing pickleball on our courts right there in the same location for 3 years.
On the tennis courts?
On the tennis courts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we just don't have a dedicated facility for that. So when you play pickleball, it disrupts tennis. We know we're limiting the hours from 8 to sunset. So there's no early morning or late night play. There's no lights. There'll be no play on Mondays. So it's, it's 6 days a week, just while the sun's up is kind of what the idea is. When people play pickleball there, sometimes it's popular, other times it's dead. So it depends. I think, I don't see a reason it would change from the existing play that we're getting now.
So, well, I'm just trying to, sort of get an idea, kind of quantify what if this were approved, what the neighbors might expect in terms of, I live in Craigwoods, downhill from Robinson School.
Mhm.
I hear the kids on the playground. What kids do on playgrounds, but it's far enough away for me and it's, it's just a couple of hours a day that they're out there. So I'm just wondering, pickleball might be going on.
Yeah, I feel like I live
Much
between a
better.
dog kennel and a train track, so I get the sensitivity. Yeah, I don't think there's any again, it's not gonna extend out of
Might be
the,
more popular or.
I would imagine, yeah, that's when most people have time. I don't think it's gonna be a big popular before work thing on the weekdays.
8 to 9 p.m.
No, I
every
can't
day during
see
the
that.
summer.
I can see after work probably being more just like any other recreational sport is what I would guess.
So, and this is maybe kind of too flippant to talk about, but I've also heard that pickleball games are more boisterous than tennis games, and I don't know if if there's
Asking the wrong
any
guy.
validity to that.
Never played it, never witnessed it. Again, I just got voluntold how to do this, so
So that's not necessarily true.
I can't speak to that. Because I've never played the game.
I
so.
mean, we don't need to measure the voices of the humans as well as the pinging of the paddle.
The best examples at Geyer and Adams. I mean, that's where the most pickleball courts in this city are. I think there's gonna be 21 that the same contractor that built the cities is building ours. And there's 14, 15 other private pickleball courts on home properties right now. What we know is, in the 3 years of playing at our court, we haven't had a complaint from any neighbors. They've been playing on their court. We haven't had to complain about their play. I mean, it's good to see people enjoying it, and being outside. So, I think the city would probably have a better answer than any of us would about the potential of sound or use, because nobody's embraced it more than the city of Kirkwood. So I think you guys can probably get some better answers from within.
Well, it does seem though that these courts are proximity to the right there on the other side of the property line is closer than separation of our courts in
Right, but they're also
our,
a little further away from the homes than the existing tennis courts, which is where the game has been being played. So, I mean, it's not,
Good
it's
point.
10 feet, 15 feet further away, but
So I've also read that certain, I don't know, clubs or courses, whatever, that there are different types of paddles, there's different types of balls in an attempt to reduce maybe the high frequency of the ping. And I was just wondering if you'd considered maybe looking at that, and your members would be recommended or required to use equipment that, is less noisy than some of the things that,
For sure.
are causing concern on the part of.
I think we know that, and those items will be for sale in the pro shop. I think rather than kind of legislating around hypotheticals, we want to be good stewards of the neighborhood. We want to see what the result is. If we find we are in violation and that's a possible mitigation strategy after that fact, then I think that's something the club would be open to.
Okay. I don't know that you can answer questions about giants that are going to be planted.
I cannot, who's been, Aiden, who's been working on the landscape? Our horticulturist and our greenskeeper did not attend tonight, so.
Okay, because I was wondering, I did see that there are 10 giant Puya planned to be planted in the area, and not sure about the landscape plan as Amy mentioned, and I was just wondering if any of those are going to be located so that they might add additional sound mitigation, because those kinds of evergreens or hollies, broadleaf evergreens are typically used for sound mitigation, so they could possibly add, they could enhance.
I believe that's why in that portion of the landscape plan, I think Amy cited that there was not a requirement relative to the racket area, but there were some added, and I believe it was just for that reason, to try to add a little bit more beauty and sound mitigation.
Okay. Oh, this is for the acoustic engineer.
Okay,
Question about how that. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear the front of your question, so would you repeat it?
Oh, well, it was just that I wanted to ask you a question.
Okay.
So for your acoustic study, I saw that the report was produced in October. When was the study conducted?
I'm sure it's in the report someplace, but
But I didn't notice it.
I'm guessing.
Single word.
Okay,
apologize.
I don't remember every single.
Right.
Yes, probably it was done, it was done right around whenever Labor Day was.
Okay, so beginning of
Or
September.
what? Labor Day, yeah.
Okay, beginning of September.
Right.
The reason why I ask, so it indicates that the noise monitoring equipment was located on one of the neighbors' property?
No, right at their property line, right
Okay.
at their fence.
So I couldn't really tell from the Google Earth shot. I was wondering if the equipment was situated amongst deciduous trees that would have been in leaf. So or when the leaves fall and less humidity and drier air, you might get a higher decibel level than when the study was conducted.
Okay, and the study was purely for ambient noise. And the meter was set at 1.5 meters, which is standard 5 feet. And it was next to a pine tree. There were no deciduous trees that I saw that actually had any leaves on at that point in time.
Okay, I'm sorry, then I misunderstood. I didn't realize it was just measuring ambient noise. I was thinking that it was somehow used for simulation of ambient noise plus the potential gain. And that location of the monitor at that time would provide a snapshot at that particular time, but if it were in winter, it might be different.
Yeah, actually, the ambient noise would probably be higher. And because the main ambient control is the highway. So the noise level would actually go up in the winter. But again, as you said, it's a snapshot, so we understand when we make measurements later when say the court's on, you have to account for the ambient noise to understand what the true noise is from the pickleball court. Because if the pickleball is delivering, say 45 or 48, it'll add to the ambient. The ambient isn't supposed to count because you're looking at what it is doing in relationship to the ordinance.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, can you do me a favor? Can you pull up the illustration that shows any of them to show the location of the current tennis courts and the proposed pickleball courts? All right, just so I understand,
These are the tennis courts
right,
and the tennis pro shop are here. So this will be between the pool and the tennis
okay.
courts.
So my understanding is, I mean, the reason that they have to come to the city is because they're building the new courts, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and my understanding is they play pickleball now on the tennis courts.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if they wanted to convert all of the tennis courts to pickleball, that would not require.
That's
Go
exactly
through
where I
planning
was
and
going.
zoning.
So they could continue to play if they
Council.
wanted to resurface or anything like that. If they wouldn't be here.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And I think and I didn't catch your name, but it doesn't matter. As far as you know, that as long as you've been playing pickleball on the tennis courts, that you've not had any complaints as far as you know? And that may not be fair. I mean, but do we know, has the city had any complaints?
I'm not aware of any complaints.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to understand the location of the two and the difference between playing on the tennis courts and new courts. Okay. That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Now we will go to comments from the public, and David will just read them as you receive them and I don't think there's any particular order, correct? You'll just get them as they were turned in. And again, I ask everyone to be brief, and if someone has already said what you want to say, please feel free to say, I agree with so-and-so. But efficiency during the public hearing from all parties, all sides is important, and we will follow that. So David, let's start.
Kathy Whidden.
My name is Kathy Whitman. I live at 12762 Big Bend Road. I was born in Kirkwood. I graduated from Kirkwood High School, and I've lived in my present home for close to 20 years. And my house is a part of the Osage Hills Greenbrier subdivision. I attended the November 16th Planning and Zoning Committee meeting held to approve these plans for the pickleball courts. And this is not the first P and Z meeting I've ever attended, and I'm familiar with the procedure. But based on what I saw on November 16th, I'd have to give that committee a grade of D+. I'd like to explain why. Osage Hills subdivision, in my opinion, has been treated unfairly by the city at other times. Examples include the acquisition of land for Montfort Park, which was suspect and probably unethical due to the fact that the property was purchased from the then mayor's in-laws for a bloated price. The subdivision was also harmed when the west end of Ponca Trail was being developed and the city refused to honor a court judgment regarding the subdivision's common ground. In this case, for the pickleball courts, there are many aspects where, in my opinion, the rules are again being bent to steer a decision in a way that is not supportive of the subdivision. The P and Z committee seems to feel that because the plans for the pickleball courts comply with the code, they have done their job. Pickleball is new. Does the code really cover this, what this is about? The committee's taken the easy way out. They stated if after the courts are built and there are any problems, the subdivision is entitled to file a lawsuit. And that advice is a sham. The city attorney is a member of Greenbrier Golf Club and was present during the November 16th meeting. And in my opinion, he should recuse himself from any of these proceedings. For the P and Z committee to state that the subdivision's only remedy is to sue seems to benefit Mr. Hessel. It also,
Excuse me,
I'm sorry, sir.
you will not say something like that. This is our city attorney who knows the law better than any one of us in this room.
Yes, sir.
And if he was needed to recuse himself, if there was an interest, he would have done that. So please keep your comments
I did
directed
say
to the
that that
city
was in
council.
my opinion.
Well, keep
I'm-
those opinions to yourself and direct to us. I don't approve of things like that.
Excuse me. It also seems that the planning and zoning committee members are behaving inappropriately. At one point during the November 16th meeting, two of the P and Z committee members were severely sniping at one another. And in my opinion, Mr. Evans was bullying Mr. Eagleton. It was uncomfortable to watch and amateurish on the part of Mr. Evans. It is an example of how the P and Z committee is being unreasonable to the subdivision. For this process, the subdivision provided a sound study along with other materials for review before the subcommittee went for its site study. It was mentioned at the November 16th hearing that the site study was difficult because the materials were so voluminous. And I agree, this is a unique situation and making decisions are not going to be easy, but to complain that the materials are voluminous indicates laziness and that the issues are not being considered appropriately. Another reason for the poor grade, it's another reason for the poor grade. Also during the November 16th meeting, 6 Greenbrier Country Club members spoke to demonstrate the report of the approval of the plans. All of them stated that they like pickleball. I like dogs, but I'm not sure I want to live next to a dog kennel. None of the people that spoke in favor live in the Osage Hills subdivision, the subdivision that'll be adversely affected by this decisions. Members of the committee even stated during the hearing that they wouldn't want a pickleball court in their backyard. And speaking of dogs, it was interesting, on the same evening as the Greenbrier pickleball hearing, the Clark Animal Hospital request for a permit was being presented. A sound engineer was present for this situation too, to ensure that barking dogs would not be a nuisance at Clark's new location. Clark has been in the business at their present location up by Bope Chapel for decades, and they haven't been disturbing the neighborhood with barking dogs. And I'm not sure why this change of location, because they want a larger facility, would change the number of barking dogs. That makes it appear that the P and Z committee does not know when a sound study is appropriate. I'd also like to point out that the sound study provided by the golf club only addresses the sound made by pickleballs. It doesn't take into account the noise made by people on the courts at which full capacity will be 16 players. Their study seems to minimize what the surrounding neighbors will be hearing. And another thing was that the problems with runoff were barely addressed, and the committee states that that's for MSD to deal with. In light of the recent flooding in St. Louis and the result of water runoff and MSD's lack of resources to deal with these issues, it's hard to have confidence that MSD's approval will be enough. These pickleball courts are creating a large non-pervious surface on a hill. Water has nowhere to go, and I know they have the drainage ditch, but if the drainage ditch doesn't take care of the problem, the water is going to end up on homeowners' yards, which sit lower than the courts. Can't the city of Kirkwood do better than rely on MSD for the solutions to these problems? And like I said, I give this committee a D- for this hearing. And in my opinion, the committee appeared to be skimming the surface and not dealing with the issues in a fair and complete way for the subdivision. Conforming to the code is not enough. If that's all it takes, then what's the purpose of the committee? This is Kirkwood. We expect an A+, not this poor showing that we saw November the 16th. And I ask that you please take these opinions, my opinions, into consideration when making decisions regarding the placements of these pickleball courts. Thank you.
Steve Kozami. Steve Pozaru. Pozarick.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm Steve Pozarick. I live at 1125 Veneta Drive. I just wanted to make a few points. One was regarding the use of the tennis courts for existing or for pickleball. Again, to the club's knowledge, we haven't had any complaints from that pickleball. And it's important to note that those courts are closer to the houses than these will be. Plus, they do not have any acoustic fencing. So there aren't the sound barriers that the new pickleball courts will have. So I think that's something that's important to note. Point two, the neighbors do use their tennis courts as pickleball courts. Those pickleball courts are immediately adjacent to neighboring houses. There's no acoustical fencing there. There's no noise control there. So I think we're taking the extra step to try to be good neighbors, whereas they're not willing to do that for their own, neighboring houses. Lastly, just to address anecdotally usage. You asked what our tennis court usage was, and maybe just to give a little, an allegory. I was driving to Greenbrier for dinner tonight. I drove by the Village Bar. The Village Bar was packed. There wasn't an open seat. I get to Greenbrier. There were maybe 12 people having dinner. So we've got a limited number of people who can use those pickleball courts. Plus, the pickleball courts are competing with our primary asset, our golf course. They're competing with the swimming pool. They're competing with the tennis courts, and they're competing with everybody's other activities, after school activities, youth sports, and things like that. So I think, we're not going to have usage for courts dawn to dusk at any point in time. There's going to be intermittent, times where there's nobody playing at all, where it's one court or two courts. So I think that's something else that's important to keep in mind. It's not going to be from, open to close every day as far as the pickleball courts being used. Thank you.
Bill Downey. Steve Missy.
Steve, go ahead and start, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Steve Missy. I live at 2131 Briargate Lane. I'm one of the houses that's closest to the proposed pickleball courts. I'm also very close to the tennis courts where pickleball is very rarely played. A couple hours a week during a few weeks in the summer in the evenings is my personal experience. It may seem unbelievable that a game like pickleball can cause so much distress to nearby neighbors. I used to think that too before we went into this rabbit hole. The mayor of Mission Woods, Kansas, and his wife Lori are suing the country club adjoining their property over the noise from pickleball courts 200 feet from their home. I live 60. The tranquil and peaceful environment reasonably expected by them is severely disrupted when pickleball is played at the forecourts. The repetitive sounds of pickleball interfere with their use and enjoyment of their property. They no longer entertain on the patio, their outdoor chairs have been removed, and Lori wears noise-canceling headphones while doing yard work. The sound from pickleball play is so loud, constant, and intrusive that it can be heard inside their home. A white noise machine is needed to mute the sound. They no longer open their windows. Dale and Marilyn Thiesfeld of Aiken, South Carolina are suing the country club near them over noise from pickleball courts 230 feet from their house. The suit states the sound of the abrupt, high frequency and irritating paddle strikes on the pickleball courts can be heard on the plaintiff's property, both inside and outside of their home. In Ridgewood, New Jersey, Carol Kling invested $38,000 to soundproof her house, adding hurricane force windows to escape the noise from the pickleball court near her home. It sounds like somebody shooting an AK-47, Kling told the New York Post. The noise inside her home became so severe that Kling relegated herself to a single room opposite the court where the noise couldn't penetrate. Finally, she gave up and moved. None of these, by the way, sound like cases where it's sort of like at your house at nighttime when no dogs are barking and your air conditioning isn't running. I love living in Greenbrier in part because club activities often lend a sense of activity and life to the neighborhood. I think the sound of the pool in the summer is a happy sound. I like listening to tennis lessons and watch people coach kids. I like seeing people I know on tees and greens while I'm walking our dog. I'm all for things that people bring people together and build community. I'm a high school teacher. I love playing pickleball. When I'm playing pickleball, the noise does not bother me. I understand why the club wants to add it as an amenity. But 4 pickleball courts when you're not playing is a totally different order of noise. It brings with it a significant and significantly different noise profile, and the location the club has chosen is just too close to residential properties, including my own. As you can see in figure 1 on page 4 of your handout, the proposed site is just 60 feet from my yard and others on Briargate and Sweetbriar, much closer than all of the homes I just mentioned. Greenbrier has a hard time in their slides cutting my property line out. My property is in most of their pictures. They can't get it out. It is that close. While we understand the convenience to Greenbrier of placing the pickleball courts in their current chosen locations, it's the most densely populated area of their 128-acre property. Noise from the proposed courts does not just affect the properties next to them. The 40+ homes within 500 feet of pickleball courts are likely to hear the sound of play to an extent that disturbs their peace. On a more personal note, my wife and I have expressed our concerns when we've been able about how being subjected to this repetitive and highly impulsive noise will affect our son, James, who has Down syndrome and autism. You can find lots of reports of the effects noise has on people who suffer from PTSD and other things. Autism, as you're, I'm sure, well aware, is a highly sensitive condition to live with, and the responses to stimuli that are unappealing are explosive, and they can be pretty terrible. He is extremely sensitive to noise. It tends to negatively affect his mood and behavior. In addition, complication of the proposed site is the fact that the residents to the south of Briargate are at least 16 feet above the proposed courts. You can see this in figure 3 on page 7. The photo you see on that page was taken from the main floor deck of my next door neighbor's home. The existing tennis court and fence are at the same level as the proposed pickleball courts and fence would be in regards to my main level deck. It's clearly below where we live. Recognizing the negative impacts of pickleball sound in this dense residential area, the country club has proposed sound mitigation, a 10-foot high reflective sound screen called an Acoustifence. As you can see with your own eyes, the proposed mitigation will not work because the sound will travel over it directly to the nearby homes. As stated by acoustical engineering experts, including Dr. Lance Willis, whose report on this site you have hopefully read, quote, in order for a sound mitigation effort such as a sound wall to be effective, it must block the line of sight from the homes, including any upper level windows, to the players on the courts, end quote. About this location, he specifically states in his report, an effective, quote, an effective noise abatement plan at this site is likely to require the construction of a building with a roof to contain the impulsive sound power levels produced by pickleball. We, the neighbors of Osage Hills, implore the city council to reject this proposal to build pickleball courts in this location so close to so many residential properties. I grew up in this neighborhood, 12635 Big Bend, and now my children are growing up here. We love it. Building in this spot will cause nearby residents to be unable to enjoy their yards and homes and disrupt the peace and serenity of our quaint neighborhood. Thank you.
Julie Missy.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you. I'm Julie Missy. I live with Steve at 2131 Briargate Lane. At the November 16th Planning and Zoning meeting, the commission decided to pass this proposal onto the city council on the basis that we won't know how loud the courts will be until they are built. This was shocking to hear after we had sent them an overwhelming amount of evidence about pickleball noise, including evidence that the crack of the pickleball hitting the paddle has been measured by experts at over 80 decibels at 75 feet from courts. My property is only 60 feet. The P&Z had two conflicting acoustical reports, as you've heard. One from Acoustic Control, the company the club hired, who has very limited or no experience with pickleball noise abatement. And one from Dr. Lance Willis, who has over 10 years experience specifically in pickleball noise abatement. When the neighbors of Osage Hills first showed Dr. Willis the country club's proposal, he said this location should never have even been considered. Because of the impulsive nature of short duration bursts of pickleball noise, it is very challenging to measure, and it needs to be measured by an expert. I shared the club sound study, the one that Acoustic Control did, with Mr. Kyle Ash from the St. Louis County Health Department, who you've heard about earlier. He is the person who will be responding to any noise complaints from residents. He will be the one deciding if the noise from the pickleball courts is in violation of the St. Louis County noise ordinance. This would result in the shutting down of the courts. After reading the club's study, Kyle Ash said that it did not appear that Acoustic Control had measured any actual pickleball noise. Instead, he used the computer program that he mentioned to simulate a what if a 68 decibel pickleball hit occurred in this location. Kyle continued, quote, "What this simulation shows and what is actually going to occur can be very different. I will be recording the actual pickleball hits and going through each minute of data to see if there is impulsive noise. The problem is that I can't do that before the pickleball playing is actually occurring. So when the city has to decide whether or not to allow that, they can really only rely on these what if simulations from the club's report." Kyle says, basically, what Mr. Holtrup is doing and what I will be doing are very different. End quote. But Kirkwood does not have to rely on the what if or wait until the club builds the courts in this location. We already have real data measurements of the noise of pickleball play in the report of an actual expert, Dr. Willis. Dr. Willis responded to the email that you have here from Kyle Ash with this comment. I have measured pickleball hits at 75 feet from courts in excess of 80 decibels. Since the houses on Briargate are at a higher elevation than the proposed courts, you can expect hits to be frequently in the 75 to 80 decibel range, even with a fence installed, as it will not be able to block the line of sight to the players on the courts. For this reason, the noise abatement recommended by Acoustic Control will make no difference in the peak sound pressure levels measured. Adjacent residents can expect to hear the paddle impacts on their patios and inside their homes whenever there is pickleball activity on the courts. If the health department came out and measured using the method Kyle Ash from St. Louis County described, they would certainly find a violation." End quote. Again, Dr. Willis has over 10 years experience specifically mitigating pickleball noise, as compared to no experience by the club's consultant. At the closing of the November P&Z meeting, Jim Adkins, the commissioner chairman, said, quote, "This could be a very expensive project that Greenbrier takes on only to have the neighbors be able to prove that this is a nuisance and can't use it for pickleball courts. That is a risk that Greenbrier is taking. But I don't think that we can really say, well, this may be the case, this may happen, and we have to base decisions on that. Because we have two sound experts weighing in and coming to different conclusions," end quote. Based on what I have learned from the county health department and all of the other evidence we have presented to you and to the P&Z, there is really only one acoustical expert with specific pickleball noise mitigation experience weighing in on this proposal, and that is Dr. Willis. The city does not have to rely on what if. They just need to review the evidence that is already in front of them to know that pickleball courts built in this location will violate the county noise ordinance. To allow the club to build on this site only to see if they will be exceeding the county noise levels is a reckless endangerment of Kirkwood residents and their properties and a gross misuse of resources. Thank you.
Kathy Converse.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Kathy Converse. I live at 2125 Briargate Lane. And before I start my comments, I'd like to say that it was my deck that picture was taken from, that you saw. There is no house that has a better view and is closer to the tennis courts than mine. I can attest to the fact that the amount of pickleball that has been played on those courts over the last several summers is probably about 10 or 12 hours per summer. I'm willing to put up with that, but this is not that. The representatives from Greenbrier Hills will tell you that they have done everything the Planning and Zoning Commission asked them to do. They asked for a sound study, the club produced one. But can it be relied upon? As outlined in the information we sent you last week, our consultant, Dr. Lance Willis, is truly an expert on pickleball noise. Dr. Willis has bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees in physical and engineering acoustics from Georgia Tech. He did postgraduate work in psychological acoustics, which is the study of how humans hear and perceive sound. For 12 years, Dr. Willis has assisted numerous clients in site selection and noise abatement planning for pickleball courts. In short, we could find no other individual who possesses the academic and real-world experience that Dr. Willis does. I mention this because no information has been provided about the experience or qualifications of Acoustic Control, the firm hired by Greenbrier to inform their plans. Their website does not mention pickleball or in fact any sort of impulsive sound such as pickleball makes. Their report itself lacks data, detail, and references. We have learned that the Greenbrier study uses as its only data source a preliminary study, done at Forest Hills Country Club in Clarkson Valley in 2020. But that study had flaws which the city of Clarkson Valley required them to correct. The amended study, which was sent to you last week, showed the extent to which the initial study had underrepresented the noise projections. But Greenbrier's sound study used the initial study, not the amended study, which means their assumptions were not accurate. Let me identify 3 specific flaws or omissions in the Greenbrier study that are quantifiable. First is the incorrect unit of measurement. As my neighbor Julie explained, the unit of measurement used in the Greenbrier study is different from the one used by St. Louis County. That's comparing apples to oranges. And our expert, Dr. Willis, says it will underestimate the sound level by 18 decibels. Second, the number and placement of the sound sources. That's the location from which they're measuring. The club sound study includes sound from only one or two courts and shows the sound coming only from the very center of the four-court structure. This doesn't reflect reality. Dr. Willis indicates this will estimate the sound level by at least an additional 6 decibels. Finally, parallel acoustical screens. The club's plan includes Acoustifence, as you've heard, placed parallel to each other on the north and south sides of the courts. Acoustifence is a noise reflecting, not a noise absorbing material. So when they're placed parallel to each other, the noise bounces back and forth between the two fences, causing them to underperform by about 4 decibels, according to Dr. Willis. When you add up the impact from these 3 inaccuracies, the incorrect unit of measurement, which I'm showing in orange here, the number of courts, that's the green, and the parallel reflecting walls, that's the yellow, it's clear to see why the club study shows much lower levels than what our data and other real-life sound measurements have indicated is likely to be the case here. In fact, if you add these 28 extra decibels from just these 3 situations, it brings the noise projection up to 73 decibels, near Dr. Willis's estimation, and way higher than the St. Louis County Noise Code allows. Dr. Willis, after reviewing all the information about this sound study, summed it up this way, and this site. If the health department comes out and measures LA peak using the method Kyle Ash described, they would almost certainly find a violation. We believe that this means that this proposal should not be approved. Thank you very much.
Patty Smith.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thanks for meeting with us tonight. My name is Patty Smith. I live at 134 Sweetbriar. I hate to admit it, it's my age, but I'm a 4th generation Osage resident. Some concerns we have is regarding the health that these pickleball courts will affect. Pickleball creates a popping noise that causes difficulty with concentrating and sleeping. It adds stress, fatigue, and anxiety caused by chronic activation of the nervous system's fight or flight response. It also has long-term physiological effects on the cardiovascular system and possible damage to one's hearing. It's as loud as hearing a freight train from 50 feet. It's as loud as a freeway at 100 feet. It can be heard outside and inside, even if the doors and windows are closed. According to the LA Times, one Vietnam vet said it sounds like a mortar being dropped in a mortar tube. The noise from pickleball will be especially challenging for our small children, those with special needs, and the elderly. This will also have a negative impact on our property values. With the valuation of a home at $415,000, there could be a loss of $34,000 or 7.7% with these pickleball courts. Because home values are determined using comps, this could have a negative effect on values throughout our 350 house subdivision. We recently had a Briargate neighbor who sold her house and moved out of Kirkwood due to her concerns about these 4 proposed pickleball courts and their effect on her health and home value. There will also be a negative impact on the city's tax base. We also have some concerns about the pickleball court hours. P&Z was asked to consider the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They countered and approved hours of 8 a.m. to dusk, which is during the summer is 8:30 p.m. This results in 12.5 hours per day of pickleball. Currently, there are more than 990,000 nuisance noise lawsuits nationwide. If Greenbrier Hills Country Club moves forward with these pickleball courts at this location, they risk ongoing litigation, which will have a negative financial and public relations impact on existing club members and possibly those on Greenbrier Hills Country Club's wait list. Also, St. Louis County has stated that after the courts are built, it is highly likely that these courts will violate St. Louis County code, making them unusable. Greenbrier Hills Country Club should save themselves time and money by building these courts in a more suitable location on their 128-acre property. I also want to just briefly address some of the items that were discussed earlier. Parking is readily available near their maintenance place. I've parked there myself. At the end of the P and C committee, Mr. Holtrop also stated, I feel sorry for the neighbors. Finally, pickleball is played very infrequently. I am right next to the tennis courts and they have been played on one court only. And the neighborhood court has been out of service for several years. We recently raised the money to resurface it. So pickleball has not been an active sport there. Thank you for your consideration.
For the next individual, I apologize, but there was a smudge in the first name, so it looks like L and the last name of McClure.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Leland McClure. I'm a forensic scientist and I'm also a 33-year resident of Osage Hills, live on Briargate Lane. And I'm also a former trustee of the subdivision. For almost 100 years, the country club and the neighborhood have enjoyed a good, harmonious relationship. And the concern that I've got after reading the reports that were from the acoustical engineers, listening to the PZ council recordings also, is that there was not a resolution or remediation of the problems between the two acoustical engineering reports. To me, that means that the job was not completed. As a forensic scientist, I'm used to looking at metrological data. Metrological means that you're referencing data back to known standards, reference standards that are out there. When I look at what's occurring in this case, though, there's still a gap that's out there. We see a difference in between the units of measure. The units of measure that we've described also can be summed up pretty easily in that the measures that were used by an acoustic control average it over time. So they catch the peak of that sound and they also get a little bit of the background noise that's in there. That means it lowers the overall high value that you're going to measure on there. The measurements and the units that are used by the county and also by the Willows report seem to be the reference standard that's out there. It gives a higher capture of what the actual peak sound is that's out there. At this point, it really gives me pause that it moves forward because it can be a tremendous waste of resources. Waste of resources from an emotional basis with a community that's here, but a waste of resources in terms of the neighborhood and the country club. Respect the country club, I do. But to build something outright and then have to go in and do a redesign or tear something out of there is a tremendous waste of resources. I get pulled as a subject matter expert into cases, civil and criminal around the country, and I see where things can go awry. And I'm really concerned that this one is starting to go off the rails here because planning and zoning has not reconciled those reports. That's something that absolutely has to be done and get down to the actual facts of the matter that's in there. When I hear somebody that's talking about subtracting background noise from the peak noise to be able to look at what just the pickleball component is, that's not how sound measures are done. I've designed testing facilities that are across the nation that test over half of the lives in this country right now. And when we design those facilities, we look at noise levels in there. It's total noise that you look at. You don't take just one part of that. You look at the total noise levels. So I'm used to looking at what happens with acoustical measures that are out there. In this case, again, respectfully, I say that it needs to go back to planning and zoning. Reconcile these reports. There is a big difference that's out there, and that can result again, and I respectfully say this, and a lot of wasted resources out there. And the last thing you want to do is to take civil cases and have the resources sent with that and all of the rework that takes place. Thank you.
Terry O'Connell.
My name is Terry O'Connell. I live at 134 Sweetbriar Lane. I'm going to start off by saying I agree with everything that's been said before, so we can get through that. But my concern is that the mitigation proposed will not dampen the noise because of the elevation differences between the property and the court.
And I feel like this is one of the reasons why I can hear the car and truck noises on Highway 270 in my house, even though there are 15-foot sound walls all along the highway. And my house is a quarter of a mile away from the highway. It's because I'm higher than the highway. I urge the council to do all due diligence prior to making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the council. I'll be brief. As I said to the Planning and Zoning Commission, when I was asked to appear in support of the project, I asked one question, which was, are we complying with the rules? The answer came back as yes. And that's clear. The project conforms with all the applicable rules, including those related to noise. And with that in mind, there's a very straightforward response and answer here. A private landowner and member of the community like Greenbrier has to be allowed to use its property in ways that conform with the rules that apply to it. Period, stop. Any other result here relies on speculation and emotion instead of the rules. And that's not a good result for the community. One last thing I'll say is that the residents are right. We don't have to rely on what if. We've got 3 years of experience already. The courts are used regularly, but they're used intermittently and sporadically, just like the new ones will be. And in all that time, not one complaint.
Mayor and council, there are no additional comments for the public hearing.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there anything else from the council before we conclude the public hearing? All right. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed and this item will be up for vote at our meeting 3 weeks from tonight on January 5th. Thank you all. Second here, I'll get rid of this. All right. Everybody leave. Well, we can talk. I'll let everybody leave. I don't want them to hear public.
Right.
That's how you empty out a room.
No.
I said, that's how you empty a room.
People, I think others are just there to. Oh, all right. All right. Okay, well, just one. All right, we will move on to our regular public comments section.
The public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed.
Thank you. David?
Mayor and council, we have Patrick Richmond who would like to speak.
Hi,
Speaking, Patrick.
yeah, I see where one gal, I've been talking about the streetcars for quite a while, and of course, I sent some of the pictures of some of the routes I created, though, which I'm surprised I didn't show them on the screen, though. The one was out west, out to past where they're gonna have the pickleball, though, it would be down Big Bend, because years ago, there used to be a streetcar line going down there, but I just can't seem to see why in the name of thunder, can't we just have the trolley? Because there's an old saying, you build it, they will come. They, like for like I say, if we build about 3 or 4 routes, especially the first route I developed, which would run between the Kirkwood Inn and the Snooks up on Manchester, there'd be like the initial starter route though. And once people have a ride on this thing, they're gonna love it though. And if we could bring it for a vote though, which I would definitely vote in favor of the paying for the thing though. People's gonna ride it and more and more and more. And then it already make it easier for those to go up and down Kirkwood Road. And if we're gonna have condos all over the city of Kirkwood, this trolley is gonna be a big thing. We're gonna need it. There's something that cannot wait though. Is that Limburg bus gonna run every 40 minutes or so, and the 57 is gonna run an hour apart? Why not have the trolley help out though? Something nostalgia, when usually see it around the holidays. Let's just have the thing run year round that we can have something for our residents who can't drive though, and this for tourists. It comes off the Amtrak though.
Thank you, Patrick.
Mayor and council, there are no additional requests for comment at this time.
Thank you, David. Move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, do we have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Move on to unfinished business. Bill 10953.
Mayor and council, this is an ordinance changing the zoning from R4 Single Family Residential District to B3 Highway Business District on property known as 10557 Big Bend Boulevard, being an approximately 0.3 acre site on the north side of Big Bend Boulevard, and directing such change in the zoning district map.
Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 10954.
Mayor and council, this is an ordinance granting a special use permit for child daycare center and authorizing and approving the site plan at 10551 and 10557 Big Bend Boulevard, subject to certain conditions.
Do you have any questions or comments? Councilmember Ward?
I want to continue to express my concern for the ingress and egress to that site as it's proposed now. I don't think it's the best we can do.
Anything else from council?
I brought up the whole thing about, the fence last time, and you all didn't agree with me, but I would still like, the, applicant and to possibly consult with, any department about, considering alternative materials. Argument for using Simtech-like composite material instead of wood with a shadow box design, not as site-proof or sound mitigating as possible Simtech type fence or wall, which is also actually Jonathan estimated maybe twice the cost, but over the life of it, it's much more durable. It's much more color fast. It's much more wind resistant. So it's about Mox Nix and in terms of initial cost. Also, 20-year lease, a type fence would be, I think, much more aesthetically pleasing for whatever possible kind of residential redevelopment that may come along. That we didn't have any residents come and express concerns. I don't know that that's necessarily representative of always feel equipped to come and complain or have the time. And so I would like to perhaps suggest giving voice to the voiceless and suggest that we consider type of materials.
Anything else from council? All right, seeing nothing else, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 10955.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating $40,001 from the Equitable Sharing Fund balance to the Police Department Other Professional Services account, accepting the single source proposal of Axon Enterprises for body worn camera and taser hardware and software for the Police Department for an initial term of 12 months in the amount of $110,001, with the option to renew annually thereafter for 4 additional 12-month terms, funding for additional terms contingent upon budgetary approval, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 10956.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance adopting a revised City of Kirkwood classification and pay plan effective January 1, 2023.
Any questions or comments?
I have one.
Councilmember Gibbons?
So it's a 5% cost of living increase, but did I read that insurance has gone up 7%?
That is correct. 7.2% exactly.
Anything else from council or? Okay, all right. Seeing nothing further, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Bill passes. Go to new business, Bill 10957.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city clerk to submit a proposition to the voters within the city of Kirkwood, Missouri at the April 4th, 2023 election, allowing the city of Kirkwood, Missouri to impose a sales tax at a rate of 3% on all tangible personal property retail sales of adult use marijuana sold within the city of Kirkwood, Missouri, pursuant to Article 14, Section 2.65 of the Missouri Constitution, designating the form of the ballot and imposing such sales tax subject to the approval by the voters.
Is there a motion for approval?
Approve.
We have a second? All right, we have any questions or comments on the bill? Councilmember Lizzo?
I have the same kinds of requirements and specifications.
Not sure what you're asking.
As far as the location of dispensaries.
That's
Well,
a
this
different
doesn't
issue.
apply. Oh, sorry.
That's a different issue. This is proposing to the voters that a sales tax be imposed on the sale. Now, if your question is the zoning regulations dealing with the location of dispensaries, the zoning code prior to the implementation of the sale of recreational marijuana will be amended to make it consistent with what we currently have for medical marijuana facilities, but that's an entirely different issue. That's not in this ordinance.
Correct. This is a sales tax, but just to explain to citizens that line with the recently passed state law or
Correct.
amendment.
It's constitutional
And
amendment,
it is,
right?
it would apply to it would apply to dispensaries of recreational marijuana that would fall under same requirements as medical dispensaries as far as 1,000 feet from school.
Correct. And again, those ordinances, Jonathan and I hope to present to you in January. Again, those will be amendments. I don't know if it'll be January. Those amendments will be presented to planning and zoning, then presented to the city council as soon as we can.
Councilmember Sears, go ahead.
Maybe by this time, we'd be able to represent that to the citizens, but we can't now because it's
Hasn't been changed.
yet to happen. and a council would have to approve it. So while it's likely, that's what we intend, I think, but it hasn't come up. I wouldn't want to make an immediate representation to the public and for something that hasn't yet happened. No,
Valid language.
you're suggesting that we let the citizens know that that the rules for the new facilities will be the same as the medical facilities, and that may or may not be true because it depends on a future event, future vote.
Vote was based on opposing a sales tax and the assumption that the requirements for the dispensaries. Okay, never mind.
I think everybody's kind of talking, not you, talking over, basically, yeah, it's a sales tax and we will soon get something recommending a change to our zoning code regarding recreational marijuana. And it's most likely what's going to be presented are the same requirements as medical. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Ward.
Well, I think it's most important for taxpayers in the city to understand, one, there is no revenue impact because we don't have any dispensaries within our city limits. And two, if we don't pass that tax, those businesses will still, if they come to Kirkwood, flourish and just will avoid a 3% sales tax.
Anything else? All right, seeing nothing, all in favor of first reading of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Bill passes first reading. Resolution 157, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution amending and readopting the City of Kirkwood city fee schedules.
All right, is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
There a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion, and a second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 158, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the single source proposal of S&C Electric Company in the amount of $197,697 for the purchase of substation circuit switches for the Sugar Creek substation for the electric department, and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 159, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the single source proposal of AZZ Switchgear Systems in the amount of $1,500,000 for the purchase of substation switchgear for the Sugar Creek substation for the electric department, and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Do you have any questions or comments on this?
Sugar Creek substation must be doing really well after all this.
After all this?
The last one was for that. and the
Oh, I
next one is
no,
for-
understood. Okay, I was trying to figure out. Did you want to ask a question of?
No.
Oh, okay, I just want to make sure Mark is here. Okay. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 160, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of Power Solutions LLC in the amount of $1,904,348 for the purchase of 2 substation transformers for the Sugar Creek substation for the electric department, and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All right, we had a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 161, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of Stella Jones Incorporated at the rates provided attached here to and incorporated by reference herein in the amount not to exceed amount of $125,000 for the purchase of wood utility poles on an as-needed basis for the electric department and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Gibbons?
I guess I just didn't understand what this was all about, and what a DCOI is, and what increased our need for wooden poles that the.
Oh, I think we've got a person who can answer that question here today.
Yeah, Bill, can you come up and answer that question?
It's Jonathan. We're gonna have Jonathan. No, okay.
Come on up, Mark.
So it's not pickleball, I'll tell you that. So what we've been doing is updating the distribution system poles and wires, and we've worked through the system for the east side, and now we're picking up speed significantly around the north and northwest, and then down back through to the southwest. The original procurement associated with the poles was for a quantity or quantities that were of a particular amount that was in a resolution that didn't cover numbers in excess of what we're talking about now in order of magnitude. So we're talking about ordering poles that in large quantities, something like 90 poles every time you do an order. That comes to about $125,000. And that amount is something that we wanted to make sure that the council was aware of. We have the bond money available to do that, but the original resolution was talking about quantities in the neighborhood of about $45,000 in order. So I thought it was prudent that we made sure that everybody knew the dollars that we were using in terms of the bond money and what we were doing in terms of orders. And this is only one of many orders now that we'll start to do with this pole reinstallation work that's going to happen on the west side as we come from the north down and finish up our modernization. Those 2 years of new poles coupled with the Sugar Creek substation that will begin construction in 2024 and then be commissioned in 2025.
What is DCOI?
Oh, those are really just these acronyms for the pole types and the type of poles that we're ordering and using. Well, we already have those in the system, but the quantities that we're ordering now are actually just larger.
And are they still wooden?
Yes.
Okay.
You've spurred all these questions. Now Wallace is going to get in on it.
Well, yeah, well, I went from crazy to why don't we just hang them on the trees that we grow on the street already? But, composite poles. You know, I see some of our competitors starting to convert to composite poles. Are those price sensitive or are they cost effective?
Oh, we have some of those in the system. We've been using those for the larger transmission system poles that are along Quan, for example. And you will see some of those along Essex. The higher voltage portion of the system that feeds the substations usually contains those composite poles in there in heights that are in excess of 60 feet. These are only 35 footers, 40s and 45s. So the smaller poles is cheaper to do the wood poles, and the width of the pole, the diameter of the poles where you get the string. But these poles, these wood poles would be fine for this type of the distribution system, the lower voltage portion, and we'll continue to have composite poles for the higher voltage portions of the system. And again, that's why I say, if you ever get a chance to go in front of Tillman, for example, and you see the poles on Quan from Taylor over to Woodlawn, those are the composite poles.
Yeah, I didn't know if those were ours or Ameren's.
Those are actually Ameren poles.
Yeah, we actually did a combined effort with Ameren on that project where it was us and Ameren.
That is correct.
Third party as well. Who was
That's
it?
right.
Who was the
That-
third party? I'm drawing.
Well, no, it was just us and Ameren. We were the only two parties, the two distribution systems that participated in that. upgrade.
Yeah, the school district was the third party.
Well, they did the
paid-
landscaping
Yeah, they paid
portion.
for other portions.
And
not-
yeah, but not the electrical portion. I'm sorry,
All right.
I only think about
I
that
was having to
part.
go back 5 years and it's getting foggy.
Can you guys
yeah.
get this straightened out? What they do, what didn't they do?
It's an electric thing.
Thank you, Mr. Petty.
Anything else for Mark? All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 162, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the proposal of American Electric Power in the amount of $385,000 for the purchase of wholesale summertime block power for the summer of 2023 for the electric department and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
Approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 163, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of Alltech Industries in the amount of $235,143 pursuant to a Sourcewell cooperative contract for the purchase of a DB41 hydraulic derrick service truck for the electric department and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
All right, a motion is second. We'll just start putting Ward Zimmer all of them.
Well, we need something to stand those new poles up with.
That's We have any questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I have a
Councilmember
question.
Zimmer?
Mr. Petty? You don't have to get up. Anything else?
Again, I think this is really the result of some good work. And you think about that Team Kirkwood concept and some of the things that we've been able to do. At the end of the year, we're trying to beat some of those things that are associated with the supply chain issues and get some of these orders in. Substation stuff's 2 years away. The equipment that's associated with what we got to do in the backyards, that's another big deal. And I think that hats off to the staff and the way they've worked hard to try to get all these things together and get some of this stuff set up so that we can move toward the future.
Yeah, and just so the citizens know, all of these things are related to the bond issue, correct?
That is correct. What you see is bond dollars that are being used for these expenses.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Well, I'm just curious about what changed that we need this taller boom from, because I know it says it to use in the backyards, but we've always been doing that, right? So what?
We have. I think that we were able to really take a look at what was being offered from the vendor. And there was an advantage in this taller boom. And so, I mean, I think this was one of the things that was a positive thing to be able to do. But when you talk about the change, the other thing that we are encountering is with the higher voltage, that 12,470 that we're moving to with the distribution system, it is a little safer to be able to have more than one bucket and work those locations. So for the guys, we felt like this was an advantage when we moved to the higher voltage. Good point.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 164, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing the addition of a new administrative assistant to utilities position for the electric department.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Oh, my gosh, Zimmer got there first this time.
Darn.
Zimmer, yeah, really.
I won't sleep tonight.
That's right. All right, we have any questions or comments on the resolution? Councilmember Gibbons?
By approving this resolution, we will have 2 new full-time positions. Is that correct?
We will have one new full-time position.
And another
We
full-time.
we will have the
position.
existing full-time position devoted specifically to water, which was split between water and electric. So the existing position that was split becomes fully water, the new position becomes fully electric.
And it showed us the cost was $7,600 and whatever cent, whatever. But
That's in this fiscal year.
yeah, but a new position, a yearly new position will add what to the budget?
Mark ran that. What is it, Mark?
Right, so, yeah. Each department's approximately the 7,000 times 4, about the 28,000 or $30,000 per year. We split 50-50 now. So when you look at the 7,000, that represents a quarter of the cost. And if you did that, you'd be able to extrapolate that to what it would be for the entire year. And again, that's about $30,000 for each department.
30,000 does not include benefits?
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, that's all inclusive.
All benefits?
Yes.
Insurance?
Yes.
And that will be in the budget. Obviously, we get presented next.
That's right.
month.
It will absolutely be in the budget. It's not in the budget currently because, well, you haven't seen the budget yet. But I wait until council approves things before I approve getting it to council with it included.
Another question I have, we got a good explanation of why the electric department needs a full-time person. We did not get any explanation as to why the water department needs a full-time person.
We happen to have the water department supervisor here, or director.
Basically, we operate the office from 7:30 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. So that's why we need our water secretary. She answers the phone for all calls, takes care of any type of administrative things from that time period. So it's not a position that can go into a part-time position because we're operating Monday through Friday. In that position, we'll also be picking up some of the additional duties also with things that are coming through, similar to what Mark had put into his request with Invisio, the ERP system and things of that nature. That person will be taking over those duties for the water department also.
So this is actually a position really in the water department already, is that correct?
Well, it's split between
Well,
water and electric.
But the position
Gonna
is
stay.
actually, is it in water? I mean, under.
Well,
It's under both.
It's-
Right now,
No, I
it's
understand.
50-50,
Is
right?
that- Okay.
Right.
Okay,
The new position is going to electric, is that correct?
that's what
Yes.
confused me a little bit. It's now, that's what I was saying. I thought it was already under water and now it's gonna, each one's gonna have their own. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
How many employees do we have total? 300?
something like that.
Approximately.
There's nobody else that could help pick up some of this.
They're not located in the same facility and no, they cannot pick up additional duties. We've overloaded this staff member already. And with additional duties, this staff member also does our GIS system for the water department also.
I'm having a really hard time adding to our employee load. All other resources as far as others that may be able to pick up pieces or what have you.
So I understand where you're coming from, Ms. Givens. I was not looking to add a position this year. But in speaking with Mr. Petty and Mr. Bensing, we feel that for the good of the city moving forward and the customer service that we strive for, it will be beneficial in operations with the new approaches we have to performance measurement, performance management through the Invisio strategic planning software that we are installing. There will be some reporting requirements from both of those departments that will need to be covered. Also, just the sheer level of business that's being done in both departments. I mean, yeah, it's a lot for a split position. It's gotten to the point where the split position, look, if we didn't have the money, we wouldn't do it. And we don't have huge amounts of money, but we're talking approximately 30,000, 35, somewhere in that range. that's additional cost to one of the utilities, and I mean, and that one's got a $32 million budget. It's a smallish incremental addition for a good gain for the citizens.
Anything else from council? Councilmember Zimmer?
Yeah, and I understand you're concerned about this, and I talked with Mr. Hawes earlier about it, and I guess for us, you know, apparently for this shared position, the duties have been growing and increasing for some time. And you all understand that. This is kind of the first that we've heard about it. So my follow-up question is, are there any other similar positions within the city that are experiencing the same type of additional workload that may require other shared positions to be added to, if that makes sense?
We evaluate all of the impacts of the overall adjustments we make through new software, and we haven't identified others that would have that problem. I do want to clarify something though, because I mean, I agree, and Mark's accurate when he says it's only going to add 30,000 to his budget on a yearly basis. But the position is a $60,000 position, okay? Do understand that, because I heard people say, well, does that include, it's including everything, it's a 60,000, but his budget typically has half that position in it. So he's adding 30. Just so you all understand that it's not a $30,000 position. We're not paying somebody 25 and giving them $5,000 worth of benefits. I wish we could pay people 25,000 and get a full effort out of them.
Thank you
but-
for clarifying, because that's not what I was understanding. So.
Right, and it came across as like, well, that's a $30,000 position, including benefits. It's a $60,000 position, including benefits, but he's already paying half of it. So that's,
So he's just having half to his budget. Yeah.
But what is this recession that we're heading into? What impact is that going to have on the city? And for us to be,
believe me, we're very concerned about that, and we're being very conservative. As I said, when I first started talking and when you brought up, I'm not comfortable with adding positions, I wasn't looking to add any positions. As a matter of fact, I've had discussions with Bill Bensing about, he was considering another engineering person, and I said, we can't do it. We can't do it right now. It is too uncertain. But that one was like $100,000 position, and it's also in the general fund, not in these other funds. So, you know, when we consider the holistic approach and the fact that the city operations are for the citizens. We do a cost benefit analysis that just identifies where the overall good of the addition is. And in this particular case, it accrues to the citizens virtually directly, because these are reporting mechanisms to the citizens when we talk about the strategic plan reporting, and the new ERP will improve reporting to the citizens, and the customer service level to the citizens is, you know, people answering the phones and making sure that they're not pulled to other things. So both the water department and the electric department work directly with the citizens through this position. This is a direct to citizen position. So we felt it was appropriate.
I don't have an objection to the addition of the position. Timing on that, on elevating that other half position to a full position, and I have some concerns with, in terms of if the rumor mill is correct, we're going to have a significant staff member leaving us out of that department. And as such, often when you have a replacement coming in, they may have considerations or recommendations for changing a number of staffing positions in there. And if we've solidified this one, then we take some options off the table for that. So I would look to just delay it, not necessarily eliminate it. I'd look to delay it until we've got those other positions locked down and where those might want to go.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I went through that process myself as to whether it's appropriate to delay or not. And in my discussions with Mark and Bill, the reason we're bringing it to you now is that we've basically had an opportunity to acquire a temp who has great experience in it that we may not be able to get in 3 months. And Mark, I don't want to speak to specifics, but we also don't have to pay a finding fee. So we'll save money now if we do it now rather than wait.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
No.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 165, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the proposal of Lockmuller Group in the not to exceed amount of $125,900 for right-of-way acquisition services for STP 5502-610 West Essex Reconstruction Project, and authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a contract.
Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Is there a motion to approve? Walsh, you're slowing down. I mean, even Sears got in before you this time. Now you really won't sleep tonight. All right, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Now the last resolution of the year.
Oh.
We'll start with number 1 in January. All right. Kind of amazing how those numbers kind of work. Resolution 166, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a public highway at-grade crossing agreement between the city of Kirkwood and Union Pacific Railroad for the STP 5502-609 Geyer Road Phase 2 resurfacing project in the amount of $337,974.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second? All right, motion is second. Questions or comments?
I have a comment. I'm sorry.
No, that's, no, you're
Okay.
first.
My comment is just, I'm really excited about the whole South Geyer project, and this is a really good, important phase of it that I think people have been, they didn't know it was coming maybe, but they've been looking forward to fixing that grade. So it's, easier, to drive across. I will say, I know a person who lives between the railroad tracks and Geyer, who, when we had the boring underneath and had the street closed for so long, and we had that issue, was really frustrated. And then when that project was over and the barricades taken down, complained about losing his private street. So so just it's a great project, and it'll be closed for a while again, but it would be so nice when it's open.
Councilmember Ward.
I would also like to add that some immediate family members of Councilmember Sears expressed their concern that we didn't eliminate the barrier there so that they could make a southbound left turn off of Monroe Place. Because we didn't act in a timely manner to add that into this project. So, hopefully the taxpayers at their expense will have to come back at additional cost to get that done.
Anything else from council? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo.
Yes.
All right, that ends our business. We'll go to city council reports. And I just want to briefly mention, as everyone knows, we lost a really good, incredible Kirkwood stalwart. I guess sometime late last week, Barb Byerly, who was so active in Kirkwood for decades and decades, in leadership positions, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, School District, and as a member of City Council, and I had the pleasure of serving 7 years with her right up here. Just a genuinely nice, competent person who really cared about Kirkwood, and she's going to be greatly missed. So,
I agree with that.
anything else from council?
Yeah,
Councilmember Ward?
I wanted to add to your comments on the Shop with Cops event. You know, our officers do some extraordinary things every day. They put on that body armor and they put that side armor and get into a patrol car, and that's that's an extraordinary event. But, you know, this one from a social standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, Shop with a Cop for young people who in many cases feel disenfranchised. That's a priceless effort. And for those officers to give their time and their energy and their emotional commitment to those kids, that's a great thing for us.
You could see, I mean, we could just see Gary. I know others are in the room, but you could see when he mentioned some of those stories, it
Mhm.
was real.
Yeah,
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 it was real.
yeah.
Yeah. Anything else from council? All right, Chief Administrative Officer report.
Yes, Mayor, I have a application for a liquor license, wholesale distributor, intoxicating liquor, all kinds, from Smart Distributors LLC Midwest, 149 Grand Avenue, Kirkwood, Missouri, 63122. And this would require a city council voice vote.
For a motion for approval.
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
All right, do we have any questions or comments on this? I can already see you've got one.
No,
Oh, I thought
I
you
was
were looking-
concerned why Councilmember Gibbons made that motion.
Oh. Oh, yeah, I could tell you it's something
She
going
wanted
on.
in on the fun.
I was getting bored with you doing it all.
All right, I don't see any questions or comments from council, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right, city attorney report.
Report, Mayor.
All right, city clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor, I have a couple items to report. First is the report of the December 7th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The following action was taken. The commission recommended approval of a special use permit with outdoor use for an animal facility major for Clark Animal Hospital at 10320 Manchester Road, which is the Green Tree Center, by a vote of 7-0. And to piggyback off of that, a public hearing will be scheduled for that item on January 5th, 2023. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lori. With that, the final meeting, or the first meeting of the new year will take place at 7 PM, 3 weeks from tonight, January 5th. This meeting is adjourned.